That you are all here. And did we give you any other soft drink except water? We are 70% water, so it's very important. 30% solid. Of primary and secondary education, would like to confirm that there will be no tuition fee increases in public schools. Provincial education directors, district schools inspectors, and heads of public schools should stand guided by the circular to the same effect which has been dispatched to them. Anyone found transgressing this directive will face disciplinary action. Government has also learned through various means that some private schools are charging directly or indirectly in forex. Responsible authorities of such schools are warned that they risk deregistration of such schools. I thank you.
Minister, can you just clarify to us when you say that
the issue that I talked about is no tuition fee increases. Boarding fees, food fees are subject to market forces. Therefore, that one will be charged reasonably. They have been given guidelines on how to proceed with boarding fees. What we are talking about here are tuition fees, and that there will be no tuition fee increases in our public schools. I hope I've clarified that matter.
Maybe can you explain exactly what you mean as tuition? Because that money is supposed to also buy consumables like books, like exercise books. You also have a new curriculum, and textbooks are quite expensive. The prices have gone up. So when you say they will not increase, how do you expect them to provide learning material in schools?
Thank you very much. We must also know that the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education has a budget of $8 billion. The tuition fees are going to move towards helping this, but they are not the complete. They are not a complete solution to it. Government is investing a lot to move towards free primary, free basic education as per constitution. So that's why the ministry is given such a budget. It is important to note that public schools are not only funded from tuition fees. They are funded from the taxpayer, and they are funded from treasury allocation. So I think that completes the picture. When we say we are not going to allow increase in this, it means if there is a gap, there's the way we are going to fill it using treasury.
But Minister, can you be honest and specific here? Since when is this money going to be put in schools? Because for a very long time, government has not given any money directly to schools, either as grants or loans. Schools have been sustained from tuition fees and SDA accounts, and there's been nothing from government. In fact, government owes schools in being that it has been failing to pay. So are you starting this funding this term?
That's a very interesting question. But the truth basically is that we have allocations from Treasury for that. If there has not been speedy releases in the past, we are talking about the future year. I always say, we talk about the future because we will live in the future. We have already lived in the past. But the future is what we are concerned about. I think that's why we all colleagues are here to talk about the future, because it is the future where we will live. So it's the future that we are talking about. Yes.
Minister.
Government approves submissions from private schools. What we have just talked about is the fact that if a private school chooses in one way or another to directly or indirectly charge in forex, they are in breach. And that breach cannot go unchecked. That's all what we are saying. Yes.
Honorable Minister,
What is your name?
My name is Nyasha.
Yes, Nyasha.
How are you?
Fine.
Which
Fees? Boarding fees.
Yes, not the tuition.
Or the boarding fees. Secretary, can you take that one?
Thank you very much. There is a circular which all schools have access to, and that circular stipulates how parents meet, look at their expenses, look at their own surroundings, and agree on a fee that they think can feed their children. And once they've done that, they then send it to the ministry for approval. That circular stipulates that they have to send their audited statements, so government is assured that money has been used correctly beforehand. They have to show us that they had, in the parents' assembly, there was more than 20% of parents, roughly, who were attending that meeting. It has also to assure us that that register of those parents is attached and is an authentic register. And once our team looks at it and is convinced that this is a fair request, then approval is done by the ministry.
Also,
Tuition fees. That tuition fees are not going to be increased in any way in public schools.
But levies can be...
Tuition fees are not going to be increased in public schools. Any other thing is subject to guidelines as given by the ministry. Thank you. Yes.
Minister,
First of all, to know that we all own this country. When we say government, we are talking about the public. I think let's say the public. Yeah, because we are here in trust. So the issue basically is that government or the public is doing everything to make sure that Zimbabweans have access to education. And it is being shown by the amount, in fact, the highest amount that is allocated to basic education in terms of our national budget. So that shows you that there is something going to be done. Enough is a very difficult word. Even we eat food, but we want to eat again. So enough is a very difficult word to say enough. But continuously, it's process. The process of improving the way we always want to improve access to education, to me, is very important. About the specific issues of specific schools, we have said for all public schools, there is not going to be any increase in tuition fees. Boarding fees involve groceries. The Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education does not own a shop, and therefore is subjected to expenses that occur in the market. That's why the Secretary has emphasized that, therefore, there has to be a meeting among parents, which then determines what level of boarding fees, because it's the parents, at least 20% of the parents, that's what I'm saying, who then decide on the boarding fees that they have to pay. Remember, it's not the ministry who is deciding that. The parents are deciding that based on their environment and circumstances that they meet, and they agree amongst themselves. So that's why we are saying, us as government, we're in control of the tuition fees, because tuition fees is the service that we give. Therefore, we then are able to determine the levels of that. About specific examples of specific schools, from a policy perspective, I cannot answer on individual schools at this moment. That is a very useful piece of information that we can then use to investigate any matter that we might not have heard specifically about.
So, Minister, there's Emphasis on
Blessed. The constitution is very clear, and if you read it, I agree with you. It's very clear, and the clarity is such that it says, subject to availability of resources.
When I beg the resources.
You are part of the nation. Tell me that we are working very hard towards that. So working very hard towards that, which means we have to know that the constitution says we have to move towards that, subject to availability of resources. So production, as we do production, every one of us, because these schools are run from our taxes, your tax, my tax, the rest of the taxes. So it's a collective question. I could actually reflect it back to you to say, when do you think we'll be able to do that? But it's unfair for me to do that because I believe it's just a reflection of saying this, as a nation, we have to work very hard towards making sure that the productivity is high so that the taxes are high enough to the extent that we'll be able to make more resources available so that we reach our goal of SDG goal number 4 of access to good education. It's a wish.
Is it not a question of misplaced priorities? Because we have abundant resources in this country.
Has been given this Silvester.
Secretary, can you? I will answer him on his later question because the later question is a complaint, which I'm also complaining. So it's okay.
I think just to make the team aware of the fact that government has already started to move in that gradual provision of free or state-funded education. This year, Treasury has allocated $200 million towards a pilot where we will start with the most vulnerable to actually give grant in aid of tuition.
Mm-hmm.
So already government is beginning to move to fulfill the dictates of the Constitution.
Yes, thank you. And of course, we have the freedom to those opinions. But I believe that Zimbabweans are working very hard towards developing this country in the best way possible. I was just in the rural Chivi yesterday, and one of the examples is that I was at a school where I was walking 16 kilometers, and whenever we were going to a football match, we would go into a lorry. So I was looking at Danamombe High School's bus, a beautiful one, and I said to myself, this country developed. It is moving. So movement is not a once-off thing. We'll continue moving, but collectively, we will make this country great because it's the only country that we have as the sons and daughters of this soil. 30% soil, 70% water. Yes. It's what you are saying is very important for the sake of providing accurate information. We said responsible authorities of such schools are warned that they risk deregistration of those schools. Deregistration, kumabvisa pamabhuku, wakanyorwa wakadzimwa.
Minister.
Yes, that we talk about fees.
Sure.
Now, with your intelligence, sir.
Okay.
But Minister,
Yeah,
this issue of fees should dovetail because parents are going to pay fees and after paying fees, the teachers will not be in school. So we want to know if on Monday and Tuesday, teachers are going to be at school.
Blessed, as we educated you in higher and tertiary education in your journalism, you know very well that at this moment, we are talking about tuition fees. I actually am very aware that you are keen to know what is happening with teachers, but that is the prerogative of the Public Service Commission. Here we are talking about fees.
But are you not worried? Are you not worried about this threat that our children will not be able to learn come Tuesday?
It is very important. One of the things that make us wake up every day is what we call hope. the issue basically, and hope, should be accompanied by action so that we improve our livelihoods, isn't it? I want to stay positive. Thank you.
So, Minister, can you return to my question? I wanted to understand the vulnerability.
Oh yeah, the vulnerability schools, I will be very interested. I begged you together with Blessed to please focus on the theme.
Yeah, it's because it's something that came out.
No, it's very important.
Yeah.
I have heard that question, and I'm saying we are not able to answer that question right now, but I think it's an important question.
Yeah, she talked
But in terms of vulnerable schools, I think that's what it's going to take, because it has something to do with the fees.
Okay.
And I'm very sure that she's going to take it. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you very much. When we talk about access to education, or SDG 4, when it talks about access to basic education for all, it is directing us to moving with equity as part of our consideration. So when we are talking development in that basic education, we are saying, when we say we want to intervene, we start with the most vulnerable. And you are aware that in Zimbabwe there are quite a number of instruments or tools that are used to measure vulnerability. And in our case, we are going to be looking at in which parts of our 10 provinces do we have the populations with the least possibly income. We use our schools, the revenue that they've had year on year, and after that we then choose a number of schools who we target, so that we start bottom up in terms of, can you say, empowering the most
so
marginalized.
will I be right to say right now you don't know where these
We
schools
are, no, they are in the 10 provinces,
Yeah,
in our 10 poorest districts. But that information is going to be revealed as soon as, it's not something you carry in your head. And in terms of research, you'll be aware that there will be our baseline. We can give you the statistics once we are finished, but we are looking at it, and as soon as we are done, and as soon as Cabinet has actually approved our proposal, then the names will be availed to you. But suffice to say, the criterion is we have to start with the poorest of the poor.
We asked why are they vulnerable?
Why are they vulnerable? It's an interesting question which really doesn't beg for an answer.
I think it's very important to know that everybody has different levels of vulnerability.
Mm.
And vulnerability is on everyone.
It's caused by so
Only that sometimes your vulnerability is 0, sometimes your vulnerability is 100%.
But Minister, I think the question is very simple.
To give accurate information. And in order to give accurate information, the ministry has set out a program of assessing the vulnerability levels across all the 10 provinces. And these vulnerability levels are going to determine, based on the revenue of schools, which school is the most vulnerable. And based on that vulnerability, the list of schools is then going to be subjected to approval processes, upon which or after which it will be made public. So it's a matter of process, but it's very important that that process is taking place. Yes, Costa. Yes, I want to say we have got in science a statistical rule for what is the minimum sample size. And it says 10%. You know, I mean, you have been to, all of you have been either to a technical college or a university, so you are higher and tertiary education people. And you know, when we are doing a survey, the minimum sample requirement is 10% to represent a population, and 20% is double that. I think I've answered that.
But
so
do you have a cap to say that they should not raise their non-tuition fees by at least maybe not more than 350% or something like that?
No, once we have said, people have agreed, and they have been able to agree amongst themselves.
So even if they come up with a 1,000% fee, it's fine?
It's a very good question that you are asking, but I think it has to be reasonable. There has to be reasonability. in the way there's sustainability, reasonability, and affordability. So I believe that one of the things which is very important is that when we are doing public things in public schools, we have to have this assumption that the people who are doing it are thinking and reasonable. It's only in exceptional circumstances that you might think, this meeting was fake, but that's a matter of process. And the issue is about checks and balances, I think. Because I wouldn't want to think that parents who sit and there are 20% of them, and they are really 20% of them, verifiable, and they meet and they discuss and they give recommendations, they said we have agreed. We really have to respect that. However, they can be set, because you are worried about extreme cases. So extreme cases are always seen. If you look at statistical data and you find out that you have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 200. You go and inquire why the other ones are 1, 2, 3, and the other one 5. And all of a sudden you've got 200. You have to check that. So that's part of process. I believe that can always be checked. I hope I've answered. Was there another question?
Yes, the ones on public schools who are indexing their fees in US dollars, are they also going to be...
No, public schools, if they are public schools, that's disciplinary action. In actual fact, it's overall illegal to trade in foreign currency. So if it's not even a disciplinary matter, it's a matter of national laws. It's not even a procedure within a workplace. It's a thing which is prosecutable. So basically what we are saying is that from our professional point of view, we will be able to take disciplinary action. As you heard, when it's private school, we are saying deregistration, because they are not within the process of the civil service. But when it comes to the person who is in public school, public like me, and the other person, it's disciplinary action accompanied by any national action that can take place using the law enforcement agents.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, with the permission of the Honorable Minister, I think we can take 2 more questions before...
Do you know them?
Does the ministry have some mechanisms to...
Oh, yes, we do. All what we are saying, I mean, Maxwell, what we are talking about is the issue that once there is clear evidence that things are happening like that, deregistration is an option that we have because we registered them. What can be registered? I think that's the action that we are really talking about. And this is serious because we are talking about people who are supposed to be trusted with people's children, who behave in such a way that it looks like they are not looking after the children. You know what I'm trying to say? It's a serious matter, and it's a national matter. It's not a matter of them and us, and that one has to take that action. It's a matter of collective national action to make sure that we have a better future for us all. And that future, you know, the state of a country is a reflection of the state of its education system. So it's a serious issue. Yes.
Okay, Minister, I would like to take you back. She asked you a question.
Said is, parents meet, they tell us which levies and what level they are going to agree on. Except in circumstances where Lisa was talking. Is it Lisa, that one?
No, it's Nyasha.
No, that what?
This one is Lisa.
Which where's Ndaka. Except in exceptional circumstances whereby you see vanhu vese vari kutenderana chakati. But this one, vari kutenderana 100 times more than that. So was that meeting fake or real? So it calls for an investigation. So it's a matter of process. So because if you come to me and say, no, I can afford $5, who is me to ask you, why did you agree to yourself about $5? Huh? So you are hoping that in normal circumstances people meet, they really agree, minutes are there, signatures are there, they are 20%, and I've proven statistically that 20% is double the allowed scientific minimum of 10%. Let me talk as a scientist and I tell you, if a student comes to me with less than 10% of the sample, I'm not going to talk to that person. If there's 10% and above, anything which is above 10% is sufficient enough. So I was also trying to prove that the 20% as a sample is very well reasoned. This is the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, which teaches basic education. And basic education tells us that 20% is a big sample. Yes.
Honorable Minister, has government set up any...
Transgressing this directive will face disciplinary action. Thank you. That's my answer.
And about the platforms, parents are spreading through WhatsApp such incidents like fees hikes, tuition fees.
www.mpose.co.zw. For any further information or complaints, please contact www.mpose.co.zw. I thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are now done.